Hello, my name is Jacob Toddson, and earlier this year I spent 30 days in England's most spiritual and bizarre town, Glastonbury. While there, I decided to test myself trying to live the most spiritual life possible. And part of that 30-day experiment was bathing in the White Springs, a sacred spring under the Glastonbury tour. I'm going to put up a couple of pictures I found online. These are not my pictures, just so you can get an idea. There's not a lot of photos out there. You really have to come and experience this place, but I want to give you a little bit of the essence of what White Springs is. While the springs themselves are spiritual in nature, what I really want to talk about today is the fact that the water of the White Springs is freezing cold. And doing daily cold plunges helped me surprisingly more than I expected. In this video, I really do want to focus on the cold water because I found myself missing the freezing cold waters of the White Springs. And that's what led me to cold exposure therapy, I think is the official terminology for it. But many of you have probably heard of this. Many of you have probably heard of Wim Hof and the Wim Hof method. And so with that, today's video, we're going to be talking about cold exposure and whether or not it actually can improve your life and maybe even make it more spiritual. Before we get too deep, we should probably define what is cold exposure therapy? What am I talking about here in case you don't know? Cold exposure really is just exposing yourself to the cold on purpose to try to get health benefits out of it. Now, what are those health benefits? The ones that have been tracked and traced and measured are definitely lowering inflammation in the body, but it's also said to help reduce stress, increase blood flow, lower blood pressure. And there's a whole menagerie of things that are claimed by Wim Hof, who is like the king kind of cold exposure. He's the one most people know about. Overall, I thought it was like hocus pocus. It was all just like, you know, this kind of like snake oil salesman stuff. We've all heard of things like that before. Like cold exposure felt too simple. As I went to the White Springs every single day to bathe in those waters, the thing I felt when I got out of it is just this renewed sense of awe and euphoria about life. Now, say what you will about Wim Hof, but a lot of the things that he says and a lot of the things he talks about when it comes to the Wim Hof method and cold exposure rings true. And I think it's something that if you're curious to learn more about, look into his methods. There's so many more videos about Wim Hof out there, but just like a little bit snippet if you don't know who he is, he's this crazy man from the Netherlands who basically has built an empire of spirituality and wellness around cold exposure and breathing and mindfulness. But the cornerstone, like one of the main cornerstones is cold exposure, ice baths. And then controlling your breathing and controlling your blood flow. You know, hypothermia is supposed to set in really quickly when you get into freezing cold waters. But Wim Hof has proven time and time again that through breathing techniques, through a state of mind, and practicing cold exposure techniques, you can stay in cold, icy water. I'll put right here the longest he's spent in cold water, but even he claims this is something humans have been doing for thousands of years. And that's something hopefully to my Norse pagan audience, my Viking enthusiast audience, the people that love Scandinavia and Northern Europe, this is something our ancestors were doing there. Exposing ourselves to the cold purposely is a technique that our ancestors used to connect to the cold even more. And a rough quote from Wim Hof to kind of go along with this is that if you don't go to the suffering comes to you. And so if you live in a cold climate, it's actually better to adjust your body when you can. So if you have cold water, icy water you can go to, and you can safely expose yourself to it, and you go to that cold, you go to that suffering, it's only going to prepare your body even more when the suffering, the cold, comes to you in life.
Hey, did you know that I'm working on a book? Actually, it should be out at the time of me making this video about my series in Glastonbury. And so this book is about kind of my time in Glastonbury. It's a fictional story about a journey into Avalon and how this main character kind of goes through this time of enlightenment, but also triumph and sorrow. He meets all kinds of weird, kooky characters, and it's a much more mature story than my previous one. Sorry, this water is very cold, actually. It's a much more mature story. And it's something I'm very proud of. And it's another way that you can help this channel by getting something in return. Because there's a lot of the lessons that I've learned in my journeys across Europe, my journeys in Glastonbury, contained within that story. So if you want to help this channel out, get a cool story in the process, please pick up a copy of the Glastonbury Tourist, now available on Amazon physically and digitally.
I'm someone in my physical body has suffered a lot of inflammation issues, a lot of stress issues, a lot of anxiety issues, in particular in my lower region. I mean, we're getting a little personal now. But for me personally, I've had a lot of like pelvic floor issues, a lot of prostate issues, and gut issues as well, and it's all inflammation. And going to the cold reduces inflammation and it helps the blood flow. And so on a practical physical body level, cold exposure has helped me. Now, it's not a cure-all by any means. It's not going to cure cancer necessarily. It's not going to save your life if you have a myriad of conditions, but it's something that so many of us suffer from inflammation. So many people have arthritis or unexplained medical conditions. That's what the doctors labeled me with. Is at the age of 25, I was labeled with chronic prostate infections with no promise of a cure outside of taking antibiotics for the rest of my life and destroying my gut health. And it's things such as yoga, which we're going to be talking about this series as well, and things such as cold exposure, which have helped me. And I think there's something to talk about here in the sense of like the body and the mind, the spirit, these three separate things. Cold exposure is more body related. You're actually healing the body. And by healing the body, you are connecting more to your spirit. And so you can connect more to the spirits of nature. I've been there when I've been in chronic pain, and I've had pain down here. Like, let me tell you, when you're in pain all the time, you're not very spiritual connected. And so something like cold exposure can really help you reduce the pain that you might have in your life, reduce your stress, which overall reducing in stress helps so much. But you also might be thinking, well, Jacob, it's a hot sunny day. There's no way this water is cold exposure levels worthy. And you're absolutely correct, which is why our next section here, we're going to be talking about how to bring you to the cold and how to start introducing this into your life. Behold, a fast transition to an ice bath. I don't typically have access to an ice bath. I'm very lucky to have one at the moment. What I do the vast majority of the time, and what you're going to end up doing for most of the time, and definitely for your first time getting used to cold exposure, is cold showers. That's right, you're going to need to sacrifice your warm, cozy showers that you love so much just for a few minutes every single day. And so it's really quite simple. Again, this is directly from Wim Hof stuff. This is not revolutionary science. I did not invent this. I just simply live it, and it honestly has benefited me, and I hope it benefits you. The best way to do it is take your normal, hot, warm, cozy shower, and at the very end, after you've done all your business, start to turn that water to cold. You can do it gradually. I just like to get it over with. Just right all the way over to cold. And then see how long you can last. You know, it could be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. Record it, and then the next day, do it again and see if you can go a little bit longer and keep increasing that time every single time you take a shower. And so this is something you can do every single day to increase discipline, to increase your cold exposureness, like you're more used to the cold, reduce stress, reduce inflammation every single day for just a few minutes. And I go, you know, this is a very interesting video for this channel. I 100% recognize that I'm trying to do a little bit more stuff like this. You know, I've been to the spiritual. I've done a lot of the spiritual work. I've done a lot of the mental work. But connecting to my body has been something I've missed out on in the last few years, and that's something that I have been working on. And this channel is a reflection of my personal spiritual journey, and it has been since the very beginning. And so I'm entering this phase of trying to improve my body, my connection to my body, and my health. And cold exposure is one of those ways, and I think it's one of those things that could help you as well. And so I really recommend get to that point where you're like, I have to get out, because that's your mind telling you, kicking you into survival mode, like you will die. Like that is what your mind is doing. It's saying you're going to die, get out of the water, get warm again. And since we are putting ourselves in these situations, you can afford to push past that limit. And so when you hit that 30-second mark and you're like, ooh, I want to get out, whether it's a cold shower or icy cold water, push yourself 10 more seconds, 15 more seconds, and keep pushing that boundary. Safely, of course, anything with the physical body, I understand there's an element of needing to be safe. So definitely do what is safe for you. I recommend definitely if you upgrade to things such as lakes or cold exposure outside or ice baths, do not do them alone, especially for your first few times. I'm doing this alone because I do this all the time now. You know, it is dangerous. It can be dangerous. If you don't have a way to get yourself warmed up, you can still get hypothermia, so please be safe. But there are a lot of health benefits to be reaped if you do this properly, do it consistently, and incrementally push that boundary. No need to do an hour-long cold shower the first time you do this. And in case I didn't emphasize it enough earlier, this is a really great way to connect to your ancestors. Just like with fasting or anything like that, is actually you know, sacrificing your comfort, sacrificing your warmth for a time to, you know, basically say, hey, ancestors, my life is so much, you know, I'm grateful. I have a privileged life because I don't suffer. I can go to suffering and embrace it. And I'm sure they did very similar things. And so it's a really great way to connect to the ancestors as well. I never thought I would become like this hippy-dippy guy, like, oh, do cold exposure, do yoga, these things. I always was kind of rejecting that. And I think that's why I got into paganism at first, is because I thought that was like the rejection of these kind of hippy-dippy things. Yeah, I was really surprised when I started doing them and embracing them and not just rejecting them, that there is benefits there. Like, do I think that cold exposure is the only thing you need to improve your life and have a spiritual connection? No. But I think it's something that you can add to your daily routine, something you can add to your life for just a few minutes. and really connect more to your body, which is ultimately going to help your connection to the gods, the spirits, to spirituality, to your life. My name is Jacob Toddson, and thank you very much for joining me for this video about cold exposure and whether or not it can improve your life. Ducky.